Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, hope you are all fine. Uh, Today we will discuss the species category. In the previous lecture, we discussed uh, various species terminologies, and now I think those terminologies are very clear. So today we will start with the species category, various concepts regarding species. So here we go. Species is the very important category of taxonomic hierarchy. As I told you, that the species is the basic unit of classification, so it's very important. So species can be defined like normally how we define species. So normally we define species as a group of closely related interbreeding populations to produce fertile offsprings. Now, like it's very clear, species is actually those groups or those populations which interbreed freely and they produce fertile offsprings. So such categories or such populations are known as species, or such organisms are known as species. Now, uh, we all have observed certain things like occasionally two organisms which are genetically closely related can interbreed to produce fertile offspring, and by closely related mean that the species which are very close to each other, like for example, the genus Canis has a few species like Lupus, Familiaris, and Aureus. So these, like Lupus, the wolf, the dog Familiaris, and the jackal Aureus, these are closely related species. So sometimes these genetically closely related species, they can interbreed. For example, we have a very common example in our environment, and we all have observed that example. When a donkey and a horse, when they mate, so they produce a hybrid, which is known as mule. Because why it is hybrid? Because it is half donkey and half horse, so we call it mule. But the thing is, the problem is that it is infertile. Mean we define species that interbreeding populations which can produce fertile offspring, but here the case is different. Like horse and donkey, they have produced a mule, but the problem is the mule is infertile. So by definition, donkey and a horse should be described as species, different species. I mean, the horse is a different species and donkey is a different species, because what they have produced is infertile. It is not fertile. So we cannot say that the donkey or horse is one species. Donkey is another species and horse is another species. Now, always these hybrids, which are produced in certain in cases like this, uh, they have shown some advantages of one parent and some advantages from the other parent, and that is called hybrid vigor. Now you know this, the mule is it has the characteristic of both donkeys and from the horses, so it has a hybrid vigor, but the problem is it is infertile. This is mule. Normally it is used for like very hard work. जंगलों में उनके ऊपर बहुत बड़े बड़े जो बोझ हैं वो लेके जाते हैं, बड़े दूर दराज के इलाकों तक पहुंचाए जाते हैं. So it's very strong. So it has both the characteristic of horse and characteristic of donkey. Now, Cuvier in 1929, he defined species as the assemblage descended from one another or from common parents and of those who resemble each other. So this was the definition which was given by Cuvier. So in this lecture, in this topic, today's topic, we will go through different definitions and different ideas of different scientists regarding species. So the first one was the generalized definition, or you can say that was the definition of biological species concept, which is accepted worldwide, or it is in use nowadays. So But these are the different definitions which were given by different scientists. So this one definition was given by Cuvier in 1929. Then Thomson in 1937, he defined species as a group of individuals distinguished by an irreducible set of constant properties and connected by descendant and genetic relationship. So here he defined the species in a different way. Uh, he called the species that it's a group of individual which is distinguished by irreducible sets of constant properties, mean they have certain properties which are constant in them, and they are connected by descendant, mean they are connected by the parents, mean their parents were the same, and genetic relationship, their genetics also match with each other, they have the same genetic makeup. Huxley in 1942 defined species yet in another way. He called it a geographical definable group, mean a group whose geography will be defined, known, and whose member actually interbreed, mean the members of these groups will interbreed actually, or they have the potential of interbreeding in nature, mean they have potential of interbreeding in nature, or they are actually interbreeding, or potentially capable, mean they are at the present they are like isolated from each other, but they can interbreed if they came close. So which normally in nature does not interbreed freely or with full fertility with related groups, or mean these groups which are actually interbreeding or they have the potential of interbreeding, or these groups normally in nature does not interbreed freely with other related groups, or the groups which are distinct from them, or they're living in their in the environment. So and it is distinguished from them by constant morphological differences. So there are three things. The first one, it is geographically defined group. They can interbreed potentially and they can produce offsprings, and in nature they cannot interbreed freely with other related groups, and they also have certain morphological constant characteristics. Morphologically they are similar. So this was the definition given by Huxley. Now, species concepts, various species concept. So Mayer in 1957 reviewed the work of all the taxonomists on species problem, and he came to the conclusion that all the definitions given by earlier workers can be broadly grouped into three basic concepts. The number one is this is the typological species concept, the nominalistic species concept, and the biological species concept. So there are many other species concept, but these three are the basics one. You can say beside the three concepts, there is evolutionary species concept, there is metric recognition species concept, this is phonetic species concept, there is phylogenetic species concept, there is isolated species concept, there is cohesion species concept. So we will discuss them in detail. So the first one, which is the typological species concept. So this typological species concept. So this typological species concept, uh, this was actually the concept of pre-Darwinians. Most important figures in this regard was Carl Linnaeus. तो कार्ल सिनाइस जो था उसमें एक मेन साइंटिस्ट है जिन्होंने ये कॉन्सेप्ट दिया. Roots of the theme came from Greek philosopher Plato and Aristotle, but the roots of this concept came from the Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Plato. So it was a philosophical concept. How, according to this concept, now what this concept say? They say species was thought as a mutable entity. Mean immutable mean there is no mutation, there is no change. Means species is an entity which is immutable, which cannot be changed. There is no change, there is no variation in species. Mean species as a fixed entity. They accepted no changes in species. They thought that species are species as it is, which are how they have been created, and they will remain the same with time and space. So species is a fixed entity with space and time, and members of the species are thought to be the replica of the same type. और इसको platonic adios जो है they named it platonic adios, and they said that the species replicate and they produce the same replica of itself. Means species are created, they are immutable, they are fixed, and when they reproduce, they reproduce an exact replica of themselves, so there is no chance of change. So the follower of this concept were called typologists. This species concept show individuality. For typologists, the different things was that was actually different. The species concept is also called essentialism. This concept was also known as essentialism because you can call it essentialistic species concept, and according to them, species is conserved and recognized by their essential nature or essential characteristics like color, size, habitat, etc. So according to them, species have some essentials conserved or specific characteristics through which we can recognize them, like they have essential nature or essential characters like specific color, specific size, and specific habitat. But it's like both of the concept, the essentialism species concept and the typological species concept, they were stick to the non-variability. Mean they thought that there is no variation and no mutation, no change in species. Species is fixed. So these characteristics are expressed in the morphology. That's why the concept is also known as morphological concept. And you know, color, size, and habitat, these things also reflect actually in the species morphology. So we can call it also a morphological species concept, that species recognized through morphological characteristics. Now the postulates of this concepts were: number first, species consist of similar individuals sharing the same essence. I mean, species are similar individuals and they share the same space, the same essence. Each species is separated from another species by a short discontinuity. So, like each species, they are isolated from each other, or they are separated from each other by a very short gap, a very short discontinuity. And number third, each species is completely constant through time. So this was actually the basic statement of this concept, that species remain constant through time and space and it cannot change. So there are strict limitations to, there are strict limits to variation in a space, in a species, sorry. So criticism, so it's very clear from the postulates that in today's era, which is an era of mutation and variation and speciation, one cannot believe in such type of concept. So the criticism is, according to this concept, species are fixed with time, while it is evident to everyone that there are striking differences in species, individuals of age differences are there, sex differences are there, polymorphism in there, sexual dimorphism is there. So you cannot stick to fixed characteristics. You cannot define a species through a fixed, like you say that the species is fixed. So this is not acceptable. According to this species concept, every species member have sharp differences from other species member. But there are species, I mean, according to this species, we say like for example, if they are morphologically different. If the species are morphologically different, so they are different species. But if they are morphologically same, they are similar species. But you know, sibling species, they are morphologically similar, and yet they are reproductively isolated. So you cannot then define those species, or if you accept the typological species concept. So there are sibling species which are quite similar morphologically from with each other, but they are reproductively isolated from each other, and that's why this concept was rejected. Then the second one concept, that is the nominalistic species concept. So according to this species concept, which was proposed by Occam and his followers, they denied the existence of real universals. So this Occam and his followers, they denied topological species concept, and they believed that only individual exist, while these species are man own creation. So according to them, there are no species. They say there is no existence of species, because this species, the term species or the species is the creation of the human beings. The human beings, they have like created these concepts or these terminologies. So there is no such thing, and they say there are only real universals, so no species. So this concept was popular in France during 18th century. Buffon, Lamarck, and John Baptiste Robinette were its follower, but currently it is only used by some botanists, otherwise it is totally discarded. So Bessie in 1908 expresses this concept as nature produces individuals and nothing more. So according to them, nature produces only individuals. There is no species. So species have no actual existence in nature, and these are mental concepts and nothing more. So according to these scientists of the nominalistic species concept, nature produces only individuals, and there are no species, such thing like species. These are only mental concept given by human beings. So species have been invented in order that we may refer to a great number of individuals collectively. So criticism. So no biologist can agree with this idea that species are human-made, and you guys may also not accept or agree with this idea that there is no species. It's known, it's a fact. Everybody knows that there is evolution and there are species. So species are not man-made; these are actual things. Now the third one, which is a very important one, and it's it is accepted worldwide, the biological species concept. So biological species concept is the most prominent species concept, and it came forward after Darwin theory of organic evolution. When you see in the first period of taxonomy, people believed in fixity of species. Then in the second period, people accepted evolution. So actually, this is after Darwinian, and it was almost second period of taxonomy when people accepted evolution. And Darwin organic evolution theory, after that, people started believing in evolution, and there was no more ideas of fixity of species. So this concept was formulated by T. Dobzhansky and Ernest Mayr in its formal form. The idea was coming in scattered form and literature and writing of the scientists like Medium, Weigert, and Walisch of 18th century, but Mayr and Dobzhansky, they finalized this concept. K. Jordan in 1905 was the first to clearly formulate the concept in all consequences, and then by Mayr in 1910. So this concept is a combination of typological and also of nominalistic species concept. So according to biological species concept, what is species? Species are actually or potentially interbreeding populations which are reproductively isolated from other such groups. Mean, if a group of population, they are potentially interbreeding, they are actually interbreeding, and they are reproductively isolated from other such groups, so they discard species. For example, there is species A, B, and C. B is reproducing isolatedly from the B and C, so A is a species. So this was the idea of biological species concept. This definition of biological species concept was actually given by Mayr. Mayr in 1983 defined 1963, I think it is 1963 or 1983, defined biological species as a species is a reproductive community of different population which is reproductively isolated from others that occupy a specific niche and nature. Mean species are reproductive communities, different populations of reproductive communities. They reproduce, but they are reproductively isolated from others, and they occupy a specific niche in the nature. Niche mean the habitat, and simply you can say the address and the profession of an organism is called niche in nature, or you can say interbreeding populations of individuals having common descendants. मीन वो interbreeding populations जिनके जो descendant थे वो क्या थे, common थे. This concept is also called Mayan concept. So according to this concept, there are three distinct functions of a species. Number one, species is a reproductive community. So we will discuss them now in detail. Reproductive community, what does it mean? Members of species form a reproductive unit or a reproductive community. They recognize each other as potential mate and seek each other for purpose of reproduction. For example, there is a dog and there is a cat. They are different species. So when they seek each other, so they will come to know that no, we are not made for each other. So they will recognize each other as non-similar like individual. So they will not reproduce. Now there are two type of reproduction. One is the before like zygote formation, the mating of the animal. So first of all, animals mate with each other and they recognize each other by different means, by pheromones, by dancing, by show of certain display. So first of all, they do not recognize each other as suitable mates. But if they do so, so here is come the second part. Their ova and the sperm may not then fuse with each other because the sperm and ova they have certain receptors on their surfaces. So again, if even the mating occurs between the different individuals, the different species, their ova and sperm will not recognize each other, and the ova will not open its doors for the sperm to enter, as it is from a very different species. So members of a species, these are reproductive species as a reproductive community, mean a species form a reproductive community. They recognize each other. So the dog will recognize a bitch for mating. So like the donkey will recognize female donkey for the mating, and a horse, male horse will recognize a female horse for its mating purpose. A male sparrow, Passer domestical, will recognize a female sparrow for reproductive purpose. So species are their reproductive unit, they seek each other for the purpose of reproduction. So different species, they cannot interbreed with each other. Species is also an ecological unit. So species is ecological unit. How? Regardless of the individual composing it, it interacts as a unit with each other and with which it shares the environment. So for example, like the species is ecological unit because they occupy the same geography, or they live in an environment, and they like interact with each other, and they also interact with the other groups or the other species of the community. Like for example, if there is a community where there is a community of there is a group of or species of Passer domesticus, like the sparrow, they are living, but these sparrow they also share this community with grasses, with plants, with nematodes, with the insects, with the other birds. So they share this environment with other, and also they are living with each other. They interact with each other. So it's an ecological unit. And the third thing is a genetic unit. So species is also a genetic unit. Like species is also a genetic unit consisting of a large intercommunicating gene pool, whereas the individual is merely a temporary vessel holding only a small portion of the gene pool. So genetic unit. Let's consider all the human beings of Asia. Only Asia. We'll take an example of Asia. For example, the people, the human beings, the Homo sapien who are living on the continent of Asia, each individual have its own genes. So that the individual But if we consider the genes of all those human beings which are living in Asia, so we can say the gene pool of Asia, of the human beings, the gene pool of the human beings of the Asia. And these gene pool, they intercommunicate with each other. Like by marriages, people from, like, for example, if a person marry another person from India, from Pakistan, India, or from India to Pakistan, or from India and Singapore, and India in China, or China in Pakistan, and so these genes, they intercommunicate with each other. Mean the one individual is just merely a vessel, is like a vessel. He is holding a very small portion of that gene pool, the whole continent of Asia. So the gene pool, the he is the one individual as he is holding a very small portion, merely just like he is a temporary vessel, and he is holding a very small portion of that total gene pool. So, like, species is a genetic unit. So Homo sapien is a species, and it's a genetic unit. All the genes of the Asia, or all the genes of the world of the human beings, a gene pool, and these gene pool, they intercommunicate with each other, and the one individual is just like a vessel which is holding a very small portion of that whole gene pool. So species is a genetic unit.